What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and Locals, Patreon. And all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to provide great conversations, and thank you all for your continued support. Gentlemen, Merry Christmas, soon to be Happy New Year, and so much for a slow day being December 26th, because silver is exploding. So, Matt, you want to kick things off?
Yes, silver is up 10% today, which is like absolutely crazy. In when you look at stocks or anything else, there's basically two different schools, or there's a crossover. There's technical analysis and there's fundamental analysis. Okay. Technical analysis is we just look at all of the charts. We can, do moving averages, and we can look back, 100 years or last week and look for these patterns and base things off of that. And technical analysis can be a very powerful tool for a lot of situations, that are more or less status quo going forward. But we're in an era now where it's all new fundamentals. So the technical analysis, people are saying, but there's a so many year cup and handle formation, and this means this. Throw that technical analysis, chartism, some people call it, out the window. Some people say, well, that's like driving by looking in the rearview mirror. There's something to that, but I mean, technical analysis can be a powerful tool. But we're not in that area right now. We're in a whole new fundamental era. And we are watching the annihilation of economic order that has lasted all of this century. If you consider that, like, the British Empire and the pound sterling did a handover to the dollar after the Second World War, the end of the British Empire kind of like passed the ball to the American Empire, and so London and New York have been the leaders of the economic world. That's now coming to a close, and today will be a historic day. Silver being up 10%, it's not like, oh, some tech bubble had, some tech guru said buy Palantir, and all of a sudden something shot up 10%. That is not what is happening. This is a battle between Asia and the West, and Asia has been positioning itself, Team Asia, China, JP Morgan moved their precious metals office to Singapore to be closer to that action. They're building big vaults and things in Singapore so people can be close to China but have secure vaulting in Singapore. We are seeing a really fundamental shift. The bluff is being called on the London LBMA, completely being called. The whole paper short situation that has ruled silver prices for the last 20 or more years, that's over. The price of silver has been kept artificially low for decades because everybody that needs silver would rather buy it cheap. I mean, it makes sense. If you're whatever you're building or whatever you're using silver for, wouldn't you rather get it at $30 than $100? Of course. But that was all based on London and the COMEX running the price scheme through shorts that are hypothecated. Like, basically people are borrowing silver that they don't have from banks that don't really have it, and are trading the same physical silver hundreds of times over, and then by selling in the middle of the night and so forth, they've been suppressing the price. And as long as all the parties were okay with that, there was no person by buying, no billionaire could just buy enough silver to drive the price up. They could always smash it down. That was called the smash team. They could always blast that price down by manipulating all of these short contracts. That's over. China is now dealing in physical silver. This is extremely simplified, but there's now a spread between the price in Shanghai and the price in America and London of between $5 and $10, which is huge. We're talking like a 10% arbitrage difference between what silver is nominally being sold for in the West and in Asia. And that kind of an arbitrage can't be sustained because everybody will eventually follow the Asian price. And that's what's happening today. That's why the price went up 10% today. And, we were amazed when it broke 70. And it could be, closing on Friday, which is very important. It's unusual because we kind of had 2 weekend closes this week because we had a Christmas holiday yesterday where the exchanges were closed. And this morning after Christmas, when it opened, it actually gapped up, which you're never going to see in commodities. It gapped up, meaning that like at the close, the price was, I forget what it was, like 71, and then it opens it's at 75. Something I have to look at it, but it gapped up. It's like, wait, what happened in between? There were so many people waiting to jump on it that it opened that up that high because the people buying futures. So now it could be closing close to 80 today, and it's not going back. I mean, I wish that I wish I had bought more at 48. That seems cheap now. I was like thinking 48. That's crazy. Now we may look back and say 80 is cheap. When silver's 200, we're going to say, why didn't I buy it when it's 80?
Yeah, I bought it at 18, man. I'm looking.
I bought it in single digits. I started.
Me too. Like, why didn't I just keep buying? What was I thinking?
When I was buying it at 7 and 8 silver rounds out in San Diego, I thought when it went to like 15 and my friends were saying, Matt, get more. It's never going to be as cheap again. I'm like, wait a minute. Last year you told me to buy it. It was 8. Now it's 15, and you're saying buy more. Now it's going to be. People are going to say, I wish I could have bought it when it was in double digits and not triple digits. And this is just part of an overall. We're moving from when people say, oh, we're in a trade war, we're in an economic war, we're doing tariffs and we're doing sanctions, and are these tariffs really sanctions, or is it what's going on with all these sanctions and tariffs? We're moving into a kinetic stage, not where ships are firing missiles at each other yet, although some of that has been happening. We're moving into a stage where we're putting blockades on countries. This thing with Venezuela does not have anything to do with drug boats. That's the excuse. The drug boats, whatever, that's been happening for years and years and years. So what happened? They can't just say, look, they can't come be honest and say, hey, America, we want Venezuela's oil. We want a regime change because the world's greatest reserve of oil is Venezuela. It's bigger than Saudi Arabia. We want it. And it's very secure because it can go right to the west of Cuba, straight to Texas. We can turn the Caribbean and the Gulf of America, Mexico, into an American lake where not a Russian submarine can get. Marco Rubio loves it because Cuba's going to die on the vine. The virtually free oil from Venezuela going to Cuba has been propping up Cuba. It's more than free. It's actually like a gift they can resell. So when these ships go from Venezuela to Cuba, Cuba can resell them, and that's their balance of trade. So as we blockade Venezuela, Cuba's going to die. The Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico, America becomes an American lake, and eventually you might as well have a pipeline running from Venezuela to Houston, because that's going to be ships like in sight of each other, one behind the other. That's the real goal. The whole blowing up drug boat stuff, this is just bullshit for the normies that need an excuse.
Yeah.
It's like what's happening in Nigeria. The Christians have been massacred in Nigeria for the last 20 years. Maybe it's worse the last month than 10 years ago. we are not doing strikes in Nigeria because we feel sorry for Christians. That's how, and Trump may actually believe that, but the people that are like twisting his arm to do strikes in Nigeria, it's about the oil. So in the list of like the top 20 oil producing countries.
This episode is brought to you by McIlvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcilvaney.com/coffeeandamike.
Venezuela is number 1, and like Saudi Arabia is number 2. America is number 10, and Nigeria is number 11. But the thing about Nigeria, which is like 1/10 of the oil reserves of Venezuela, the Nigerian oil is like sweet crude. You can practically put it in your car. So a barrel of Nigerian oil is a lot better than a barrel of Venezuelan oil, because the cost to extract a barrel, I forgot what the acronym is, energy in, energy out, to get a barrel of gasoline out of Venezuelan oil takes a lot more energy at the refinery than to get a gallon of gasoline out of a barrel of Nigerian oil, because it's much higher up on the scale. It's already practically refined. So you can say, well, who cares about Nigerian oil? It's only 10% as much as Venezuelans. Right, but it's much more valuable per barrel. And if you look at the map, Nigeria to Texas is like a straight shot across the Atlantic Ocean. You don't have to go around the Cape of Good Hope, and you don't have to go through the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean. We already saw last week a Russian ship. I mean, we've seen Russian ships in the Black Sea getting blown up by British-made sea drones. There was also one in the Mediterranean blown up by a quote-unquote Ukrainian sea drone, which is a British Navy firing at a Russian ship. So from the Mediterranean now is a war zone. The Suez Canal, the Houthis can shut that off like turning a valve, right? If you go around the Cape of Good Hope to get to the Saudi and Iraqi and all that oil, South Africa is a BRICS country now. So South Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, that's going to be a Russian and Chinese naval base. So we're not just going to have choose your poison. Would you rather go past the Russian and Chinese naval base, or would you rather go through the Mediterranean and the Suez Canal? So not only is the distance from the Middle East to Texas twice as far, it's going through all these choke points where you could have, any little ship can just pop a sea drone off and your tanker's blown up. But if you're going from Nigeria to Texas, it's just blue Atlantic. And we do have, still like a world-class big Navy. And when it comes down to like convoying tankers, that's a doable mission. Nigeria to Texas is a doable mission. Venezuela to Texas is a gimme. One of the ships we're chasing around was a Chinese ship. So we're telling China, oh, you get some of this quote-unquote sanctioned oil from Venezuela? Well, guess what? You're not getting it anymore. So we're tightening the screws on China's oil supply, and we're sending a message to China that the Americas we're going back to Monroe Doctrine, and the Americas are going to be our backyard. So how's this relate to the silver? Two biggest silver producers are Peru, still, even after centuries with the Spanish and all of that, Potosi, the Silver Mountain. Peru and Mexico, biggest silver producers. China, it turns out, nobody's been paying attention until till companies like Samsung wanted to source some more silver. They go to China, they go to Mexico and Peru, and these mines tell them, I'm sorry, we got like a 10-year contract with China. And if you want to buy ahead of China, you're going to have to pay at 15 or 20% over the spot price to ensure delivery. So China has economically bought these mines, so to speak, but they have to get them from Mexico to China physically. And we're telling the world that we'll go after tankers in the Caribbean. And when we do these drug boats, if you'll note, it's important to note, Venezuela is only in the Caribbean. Colombia is in the Caribbean and the Pacific because the Panama Canal comes right into the top. You'll see about a third of these drug boats we're blowing up are in the Pacific. So that's not Venezuela. So we're telling the world, Caribbean or Pacific, we'll drop a missile on your ass if it comes down to it. So China has to now be wondering, what good are our contracts with these, huge mines in Peru and in Mexico if the American Navy is going to put sanctions on us and then drop SEALs onto that ship? I mean, what I'm saying is we're not firing missiles from like submarines and frigates yet, or submarines and destroyers yet, but we are kind of like at that Cuban Missile Crisis level where we're embargoing Cuba. We're now embargoing Venezuela.
Yeah, I think it's bigger than that, Matt. I think this all comes back to the Darien Gap, and it comes back to Panama as much as it's about Venezuela oil, right? This is us. So let me back up a little bit because I want to touch on something you talked about earlier, right? So I had this conversation last night too, which is interesting. One of the things that people forget is the Chinese took a page out of our playbook from the 50s after World War II. We did the exact same thing after World War II. We went around the planet and we bought up all the mineral rights, and we were extracting all of the rare earth minerals. We had mineral rights across the planet. But then in the 60s and 70s, we started selling them off, and Rio Tinto and a few other companies came into existence and became the big mining companies. Well, China has gone around for the last 20 years buying mineral rights around the planet. Like in Tanzania and a few other countries, they have Chinese autonomous zones because they've built mines there, and they have such a big population that are actually harvesting the rare earth minerals.
But
can I interrupt you guys for 1 second? Steve, why did the United States why did they stop then? Why did they reverse course?
Because we started offshoring all of our production capabilities in the 70s. So we didn't
greater
have
profit,
a need.
cheaper to buy it from them.
Right.
Yeah.
It was all about cheap labor and cheap production, and it was really designed to kill small town America is what it was really designed to do, because a lot of these manufacturing facilities were in smaller towns around the U.S. And once we rolled up the manufacturing, we didn't have a need for all these rare earth minerals except for the defense industrial complex. And once that, look at the defense industrial complex now, they couldn't scale to meet the demand even if we wanted to. Like one of the things we did in World War II, which again the Chinese took a page out of our playbook, is they have dual purpose factories. They can quickly retool to be wartime factories. They can quickly retool their technology factories to be wartime factories. We haven't done that. We haven't modernized. We haven't done anything. So once we started closing out the manufacturing capability, that's when we really started to lose and to sell off the mineral rights, right? And the Clintons sold off the uranium rights to the Russian company. That's scandal, but that's a different situation compared to what China's been doing. China has a strategic plan.
We closed our tungsten mines and sold off our strategic tungsten reserve. Sold it off.
Yeah.
And is that what killed states like Ohio, Michigan, Midwest?
Well, we killed off our steel industry in the 70s, and we've never recovered from it.
So China has the reason China leads in rare earths isn't because China's got this fantastic rare earth mine somewhere. Rare earth just means we're willing to dig up, Rhode Island and put it through a machine and turn it into an open pit mine and build the factories and technology to extract the rare earth from all the dirt in Rhode Island or Delaware, right? We could do it in Ohio. We could get the same rare earths out of Ohio if we wanted to make Ohio into an open pit mine. China's willing to do it. They invested in the machinery to take all the dirt in Rhode Island and turn it into rare earths. It's not when we hear about, oh, Ukraine, we can get the rare earth from there. It's not like, oh, Ukraine's got some amazing rare earth deposit. It's just that BlackRock would be willing to turn Ukraine into an open pit mine and build factories there to do it. That's all that is. So China, in dealing with the Mexican and the Peruvian silver mines, they're at the point now where they're saying, you don't even have to refine it. You put the slurry, you put like the low grade, the 1% stuff on a ship, we'll take it to China and do the refining here. So it's really coming down to supply chains and sea lines or lanes of communication. So China is trying to get out ahead on the silver. There's a lot of talk about, the Samsung super silver battery, where, you're going to drive 900 miles on a 9-minute charge, but the battery is going to require like, a pound of silver. I don't know if that's hype or BS or not, but silver in a sense is competing with oil now. We're going to always need oil for airplanes and ships, but for the cars and the houses and everything else, we might be transitioning to more to a silver economy. People might look back and say, silver at $70, can you believe it? That was like gasoline at 25 cents. It was so cheap. People are talking about restrictions on silver where they could say, Americans, you can't own more than 100 ounces of silver because Uncle Sam needs that silver. We can't build the next missile generation without your silver. Be a patriot and turn in your silver. And by the way, we know who you bought it from. We know what you've got. But we need the silver because we can't build our new Navy and Air Force without the silver. So you could see some crazy stuff like that happening. But yet China has to get the silver from Mexico and Peru to China. And as long as we're just in a trade war, tariff war, sanction war, fine, the ships will keep going. But what happens when we say, Peru, you can't send that ship to China because China is sanctioned now for the bad thing they did over in Taiwan or somewhere. So the world is splitting into, it's really going to be a tripart world where Europe is like the crippled lame uncle that we don't even talk about anymore. But it's going to be Russia and China, and them together is a powerhouse, right? That's the world island, theory compared to Mahan's sea power theory. America is for sure, and this is why we're talking about Greenland. It's like the game of Risk. If you own Alaska, Greenland, and Panama, nobody can touch you, and you've got almost everything you need. And that's so strong that you can pretty much control South America. And it's just a little quick jump from the Americas over to Nigeria. It's like an easy 6,000 kilometer or 6,000 mile ship ride from Nigeria to Texas with the oil. You don't have to go through the Mediterranean, the Suez Canal, go around Cape of Good Hope. The world is splitting into these supply chain factions where we're not announcing it yet that we're at war with China and no ships are leaving Peru to go to China. But that's where we're going. And another way of looking, a factor of this is these Chinese shipping fleets that are raping South America on both coasts. So when people say, and I have said, like, Matt, we should not, don't get into Venezuela. It's 5 times bigger than Vietnam. All the people in South America hate Uncle Sam. Well, they also hate the Chinese for raping their fisheries off of Chile and Argentina. They come right up to the exclusion zone, and it's like looking at the map of North Korea to South Korea, the lights on both sides. So it's not like South Americans love China. They appreciate that they're building megaports in Mexico and Peru. That's great. Highways, all this infrastructure. But the Chinese are also just raping the ecology there. So Uncle Sam has some cards to play in this game. But it's like a big global game of Risk. And America, that's the only reason we're talking about Greenland. It's not rare earths under all that ice. It's geography. We're going to have and control this sphere. And Russia, you can control Ukraine and that sphere, we don't care. Europe, you don't even matter. You gave yourselves to the Muslims. It's too bad. Feel very sorry for the people there. China is going to run Asia. They're going to run Taiwan. They're going to run South Korea. They're going to run Japan. And the U.S. Navy is not going to go save Taiwan. China could easily turn around and say, we're now sanctioning Taiwanese chips because they're being used in American missiles that are being fired, in these situations. We have a deal with Russia, and the semiconductors from Taiwan Semiconductor are going into American HIMARS missiles to fire at our ally Russia. So we're now sanctioning Taiwan, and we're going to blockade Taiwan. It won't be an invasion like we wake up and it's D-Day, China is invading Taiwan. It's going to be ratcheting as we put more, as we tighten the screws on Venezuela, and then we put the pressure on Peru and Mexico over the silver. China's going to say, we can play that game too. No more South Korea, you can't do that anymore because it's going into American weapons that are being used in a war of aggression. So we're transitioning from a sanction and tariff and political and diplomatic realm into an out and out who controls what sea lanes, and we're willing to drop SEALs onto ships. And the British have hit a Russian tanker in the Mediterranean, Ukrainian, quote unquote. And we did the Nord Stream pipeline, right? We blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. We cut off our ally from the cheap oil or the cheap natural gas. LNG gas from Texas costs 4 times more. Europe is suffering because they got to run their industry on natural gas from Texas. It costs 4 times more. So we are now seeing the world cleaved into these sections, and we're going to use all kind of excuses like, the Nigerian Christians are being hurt, or the Venezuelans are making fentanyl. But we want the oil, and we don't want China to get the oil, and we don't want China to get the silver.
Here, let me ask you both something. Steve, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I had this conversation last night about Venezuela. The other part of Venezuela that people don't realize is that Smartmatic and Dominion came out of Venezuela. And Chavez was the one that, and his group are the ones that came up with the software. Whoever is running the information war for Trump is a moron. Because if Trump just came out and said, look, we're going after Venezuela because they meddled in 2020 elections, we've got all the receipts, we're going to go in there and take Maduro out because he's got a strong Cuban presence. The Cuban presence is part of what was driving our elections, and elections in 135 countries that should be overturned because these voting systems are so inherently insecure and they're designed for cheating. That's why we're going in there.
Oh, yeah, Patrick Burns on Alex Jones today talking all about this.
Yeah, and the American public would be like, okay, let's go take this guy out.
And Patrick Burns is saying that there's this war within the Trump administration because there are literally people in the Trump administration that have taken money from this Venezuelan PR firm.
I was getting there, yeah.
And you're talking, a shipload of oil. The ship is worth 10 million. The oil in the ship is worth 100 million. So what you talk about like Scarface, Al Pacino in the 80s in Miami. Oh, wow, look at that, duffel bags full of cash. That's nothing compared to you give a general the profit from a shipload of oil. Yeah. That is like, 100 million in one ship. And you give it to a general, and he now is, your servant.
Or you contract with privateers to go and secure those boats.
Or you give a few million to American politicians and people that you say, your wife has a side business, and we'd like to pay her $1 million, and we'd like to, for convenience, we'll pay into her Bitcoin wallet. Except instead of $1 million, 10 million shows up. And she never says anything about it. But then they remind her, who controls her because they can blackmail her with that knowledge. So that's what Byrne is saying, that in the next month, but I've been hearing this for like 2 years, in the next month. But Patrick Byrne and Alex Jones are saying they've got all the receipts, that Venezuela, the Georgia thing with the 300,000, phantom votes that swung the whole election, that they've got all the receipts. Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, they've got all the receipts.
I've heard that too.
I've been hearing it. It's like, when are the arrests coming?
Never, never, never. They're never coming. They're never going to happen. That's Sorry, I know I'm going to get some shit for this.
Trust
I'm
the
going to get
plan.
messages. I'm going to get messages. You're a doomer. You're black-pilled.
Trust the plan. Isn't
Look
that
at
what the Q people said? Trust the plan.
I'm sorry. It's, I heard the line,
Well,
Americans.
we've got like 13 days before the statute of limitation runs out for January 6th, right? So there's your litmus test right there. If she
But conspiracy, if you have aggressive, like the Democrats or like the Democrat lawfare people are aggressive, if it's conspiracy, the last time that Brennan and Comey did anything, said anything, restarts it. So for conspiracy, it depends on how aggressive your lawfare wants to be. If Pam Bondi was, replaced with a Matt Gaetz, remember when Matt Gaetz was possibly up for DOJ?
Yeah, I watched his interview with Tucker, and I got to say, he explained it all. He's like, I would set up meetings with senators, and they wouldn't take my meeting. So I knew right there I wasn't going to get nominated. Like, the guy's smart enough to know, but I think Trump can nominate him when they're in recess. So when they recess, he can fire that bitch, and he can nominate Matt Gaetz and put him in there in the interim, and just keep him there until he leaves office.
Yeah, Patrick Byrne said something interesting about the Venezuelan payola, that they have I forget the name, it begins with B. It's like an innocuous sounding name like Bunnell or Bannock or something. So this PR firm is a Venezuelan cutout, and they'll like contract with the spouses of American politicians that suddenly find millions of dollars in their crypto wallet, and Pam Bondi and Susie Wiles were both approached by them, and according to Patrick Byrne and his sources, they turned it down. Okay, that's fine. But did they walk into the counterespionage division, whatever they call it, where they work, and say, I was just approached by this this company? There's a thing in corporate law and in military in military law. You can't you can't go on vacation in Austria, be approached by the KGB to be a spy. Turn them down. That's great. But you got to go in and talk about it. You got to go to the FBI and say, Carter Page, when he would come back from Moscow, he gave full debriefs, right? And they still twisted around to say he was not an FBI or CIA asset when he was. That was one of the whole precepts of Crossfire Hurricane, was that Carter Page was diddling with the Russians and didn't admit it, but he did admit it. They changed it. That lawyer Kleinsmith changed it from was a CIA asset to was not. That letter put the whole shit on Carter Page and opened up the whole Crossfire Hurricane by the 3-jump rule. Anybody that ever emailed Carter Page, that ever emailed those people, opened up the whole Trump world to complete surveillance for years. And that guy Kleinsmith, he got a wrist slap, a year of probation, and he's a lawyer again. Yeah. That guy Kleinsmith, he should have been taken out and rope necktie.
That's why with that, when we get onto that subject, to me, if it does happen.
But Mike, just to finish, Pam Bondi and Susie Wiles, if they were approached to be corrupted, and they turned it down, that's great. But you've got to then go straight to your counter intel guys and say and do a voluntary debrief on that.
If those counter intel guys are FBI, and that's the same FBI that was involved in January 6th. What do you think the odds are that they don't know that this PR firm is bribing people to look the other way for Dominion and Smartmatic? I mean, come on, we're talking about the same FBI that, Kash Patel went into and promoted all the douchebags that were, hunting down domestic terrorists.
The Republican Georgia Secretary of State, what's his name, Raffensperger,
yeah.
Yeah.
If it turns out like, his brother suddenly got this amazing construction contract, to build an ice skating rink in Atlanta, that he put $5,000 into, and it wound up with $10 million. We're looking at Minnesota. All of these daycare centers, all of these feed the poor centers, they're empty. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go back. I want to go back to international here for a second because, like because it's never. I don't want to say it's never because I don't. What do I know? But until I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it. And the whole movie of this like justice and people are going to get arrested and all that. Like, I've seen this before.
Trust the plan.
Right. That's what I don't even like even we're going down this rabbit hole. I want to come out of this rabbit hole and go back into Venezuela.
I just can't even understand why, you know, I get there's a civil war going on because there's a lot of deep staters and a lot of swamp creatures that are in the Trump administration. I got that. But
and blackmailed and payola.
So we're not coming out of this rabbit hole. We're not coming out of this rabbit hole yet. We're going to stay in it for a little bit longer.
We're going to stay in it for just a little bit longer. Who's to say that Bondi and Susie Wiles aren't taking other money, right? Like Big Pharma, right? They got a better offer from Big Pharma.
I won't take it. I won't take it from Venezuela, but Mossad.
Yeah. So anyway, it just depends who's paying. You know, I've said this before, and Mike, you're gonna laugh when I say this again.
I'm laughing already. I'm laughing already.
Somebody's bitch. Whose bitch are they? Right? Whose bitch is she? Is she Mossad's bitch? Is she the Saudi bitch? Whose bitch is she?
Mossad.
Because I'm telling you, one thing I learned in the desert, watching these VTCs with all the MNC commanders and the MNF commanders and the Bush administration, all those jackals, is that all those generals are somebody else's bitch. Every single one of them. It didn't matter who they were. And look, let me just qualify this with, I work for General Carter Ham. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. I did not understand what he was doing the first 3 months I was in country. I'm like, why aren't we hunting these guys down? And he would say very calmly, this problem will sort itself out. We've got it in hand. It will sort itself out. What he was telling me is he had a classified program going on over here, and he was calm because he knew what was going to come out on the other side. But I watched him. He would have me sit and I would watch the VTCs that he would do. And I'm telling you, everybody has a controller. Everybody. I don't care who they are. The president's got 100 of them. 100 assholes running around, programming his schedule, coming up with his policy statements. He's even got somebody doing his Truth Social, which I would break their fingers because they don't have a mastery of the English language. But that's a whole different conversation. But my point is, they're all somebody's bitch. It's just whose bitch are they?
Yeah, I would highly recommend in this rabbit hole Mike Benz, who's on Mike Benz Cyber on X.
We can't get out of this rabbit hole.
He's been doing unbelievable work on the CIA Epstein connection, and Epstein goes back to Epstein and CIA back to like high school.
Yeah. I watched a good portion of it, and I'm like, he's done the. I want to know who's behind him. I want to know who's behind him and Tucker.
Bill Barr, what's his name? BARR.
Bill Barr,
Bill Barr. Yeah,
Bill Barr's father was the headmaster of this Dalton school. He was OSS before there was even a CIA. They bring Epstein in as a professor when he didn't even like graduate from college. And the next thing you know, he's like, you know, handling billions of dollars and moving Oliver North's Southern Air Transport to Columbus, Ohio, to fly underage girls and loads of drugs and pallets of cash and anything else the CIA wanted to do all around the world off the books.
Well, that was Les Wexner, right? Wasn't Les Wexner tied to that? Because Limited and all that was based
on.
But
all of these connections, in this sense, Epstein was like a Rosetta Stone, and
what Mike says without saying, which is something I've been saying for a while, is that Epstein was not the only island. Epstein was not the only operative, right? He was one of many around the world that service geographic regions. Remember, this is a machine. This is a system. This is not just one guy.
Right. But Epstein is a useful prism. He's a prism to understand the machine.
Yeah. And Mike does a good job explaining to just how efficient the machine is, because people don't realize that this has been going on a hell of a lot longer than people think. Epstein was not just a 90s character. right? This goes all the way back to the 70s and the 60s, right? And Bill Barr's father was an apprentice of Allen Dulles, and Allen Dulles was a creator of the CIA, and he was the architect of how the CIA is completely unaccountable to the rest of the government. I mean, he's the guy that architected all of that, and he's also the guy that started to create off the books programs so that they could fund their illicit operations without having to get appropriations from Congress. He's the guy that started all that.
But
shit.
in World War II, the British had the OSS, and the American, or excuse me, the British had the SOE, Special Operations Executive, but they were like hand in glove with the OSS.
Right.
And after World War II, I mean, most of the people watching this probably know all this, but after World War II, the Nazi intel network was just vacuumed into this.
Literally lifted right out of Berlin and brought over here.
Right.
And here's the other piece too.
The whole transfer from Britain being the big empire to America being the big empire, their intelligence services did a handover during and after World War II. So all of the dirty deals done dirt cheap that had been done out of London and then were done out of Washington, it's been a smooth transition. Yeah. And continues to this day. So it goes back, like Alex Jones would say,
decades.
When the Windsors changed their names from the Schnickelgrubers or whatever the hell they were when they were Germans. I mean, it goes deep. It's very deep.
And the thing that most people don't realize is that Allen Dulles was also the guy who was the only one in a position, because he was in Switzerland for the war, to have direct contact with the Nazis during the war. So it's widely believed that he had more than a few idle conversations with the Germans after 1944 about post-war Germany, what post-war Germany would look like.
If things don't work out well, don't worry, we'll take care of you.
Right. And Bill Barr's father was a part of that whole discussion and a part of that whole architecture, as well as George Bush Sr. and George Bush Sr.'s father were all, architects in that environment. Now, George Bush, H.W. Bush, was actually fighting World War II, but after the war, he went to work for Allen Dulles because of Old Man Bush. And then we had the product of, with Bill Barr as the fixer, et cetera. So the point I'm trying to make, there's a long lineage of CIA affiliation with all these different systems they put in place. Drugs is just one, right? Human trafficking is another, intelligence sharing. You can go down the list of what they've all done. How this comes back to Venezuela, though, is that we have elements within the CIA that are funding the cartels, which our troops are fighting against right now. It's the same situation in Syria. This is something the Mad Gets called out, right? That we have CIA-funded terrorists in Syria that U.S. troops are fighting on the ground.
Fighting the Army-funded terrorists.
Yeah. So.
And the president of Syria, we put in there.
Yeah, and he's a terrorist.
Well, he got a $10 million bounty on his head, and then they give him a haircut and give him a corporate suit and change his name.
And he's in the Oval Office schmoozing with Trump.
Yeah, but that's not a gig I would want, just so everybody's clear. I wouldn't want that gig because there's only one way that ends. He gets smoked and he's a pink mist at the end of it.
A car bomb.
Enjoy it. Enjoy it while it lasts till the mic blows up.
Have your young Italian wife start the car every time.
Who would good movie reference. Who would remove him then? The rebels, or
just take your pick.
I mean, what would wear out his welcome though? What would because he's doing a good job according to these people right now.
Ends up dying of a very, very lethal virus.
Right.
Whether it's lead poisoning, Ebola, or whether it's explosive device.
And whoever the New York Times said did it, didn't do it.
Yeah. You're useful till you're not is the point. He's useful right now, but at some point he's not going to be useful, and he won't be around very long. Unless
he gets on a sailboat and changes his name, and but same thing with Zelensky. I'm expecting I think that Zelensky is going to go on one of these international road shows, be off the radar for a day or two, then he's going to pop up in Tel Aviv getting medals. Probably. Or just a witness protection.
How were they able to break the chink in the armor then with Assad? Because man, that guy was like a cat. They were trying to get rid of him during the whole Arab Spring, and I mean Egypt, Yemen, Libya. They broke all those leaders, but they were not able to break that regime.
But
Well,
one
think about it
province,
from Israel's perspective. Israel benefits from a destabilized Middle East
right?
because they don't have to worry about troops massing on their border. They don't have to worry about, interdiction and terrorist activities within the confines of Israel. It's all manifesting outside of their borders. So for them, chaos is beneficial.
Right.
For the rest of the Middle East, it's not.
But Israel would love Iran to turn out like Syria with
Absolutely,
5
they would.
competing warlords and no power in Tehran.
Yeah.
Is it too powerful though? Is Tehran too powerful at this point that it won't break?
Well, you have to look at Iran like Egypt, right? So Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Muslim Spring, and then they were immediately, basically taken out of power by the military again. And it's because Iran has the same type of system that Egypt does. And that is if you make it to a general officer, you get basically ownership in businesses within the country. So it behooves them to keep the status quo because they're making money because they own all these businesses and their retirement and their family are set.
They're invested
Right?
in the community.
Yeah, they're basically, just think of them as Roman legionnaires that are paid, to go fight, right? They're not given ribbons or anything else. They're given companies. They're given money. And this is something that
But
can
it's
hand
something
out.
that's different between it would maybe comparable to Turkey, but definitely not Saudi Arabia or Egypt. The raw IQ power of Iran is like equal to Europe in the sense that they don't need to send people to learn engineering in Germany. They got their own engineering schools.
Yeah.
Egypt wants to build a modern bridge. They got to bring in guys. The Turks can build a damn tunnel underneath the Bosporus by themselves. When the Germans would set up gun factories in Turkey, the Turks are like, okay, we understand, we got it now, because the Turks have a very strong admixture of DNA. Yeah, they're Muslim, but remember they were Christian forever until very late in the game. So the Turks are nothing like Saudis. Man for
Same
man.
with the Persians. Persians are the same.
The Persians invented chess. So the Persians, the Shahed drone, these are like, car-sized drones that like you can launch off a pickup truck or you can launch like 5 of them, like stacked on top. So the container is like this and the container goes like this and 5 ripple off. The Iranians invented them and licensed them to Russia. So the Russians call them, I forget the name of the Russian name for them, but but it's basically an Iranian invention. Something, not a quad rotor little thing and not like, a freaking ballistic missile, something that's in that niche that America doesn't have a counter for. That the Yemenis can use to drive us out of the Red Sea. These things that cost, $50,000 or $100,000, and we got to shoot like $4 million worth of missiles to protect the ship. So they shoot a salvo of these, total cost $200,000. To protect from that salvo, we fire $10 million worth of standard missiles. The math doesn't work for us. Well, that's the Iranians playing chess. They're very smart people. So don't discount the Iranians. They pummeled Israel in the 12-day war is called the 12-day war because Trump called it off then. He's got a good knack for naming things, and both sides were willing to take a breather. But the Iranians were just getting started. The Iranians could have turned Israel into a junkyard, and Israel couldn't have turned, without going nuclear, could not have turned Tehran into a junkyard. The scale is too big.
But I wouldn't be surprised.
It's like
Matt,
Rhode
if they're
Island
behind.
having a missile war with Texas.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're not behind part of the water issue in Tehran. I wouldn't put that past
Like
Israel or us.
plane geo-salting and
Yeah.
aerial stuff.
Mm-hmm. I have a lot of friends that are Persian. They all say the same thing. It's interesting to talk to them after all this stuff's going on, because their whole thing is we hate our government. That's why we're here. But could you stop blaming our country for all the bad shit that's going on? Because
Everything.
it's not us. It's not us. And they're very clear about it, like, it's not us. Okay. It's Mossad that does all of this. So we just put blame where blame's required. And one of the things that I think is interesting is they'll say that the regime is so busy staying in power, they don't have time to project force outside of the country because they have so much internal unrest all the time. Like the place is a simmering cauldron. And he's like, I don't know how we could possibly motivate the population to go fight a war when they hate the government more than they hate Israel.
And they have no water.
Yeah, they have no water. That's the other part. So
that's another form of warfare that we could be seeing is you get upstream and you have you do something, you pay off the country upstream and turn off the river flow. You have these dams in Turkey that are also in like the what do you call it, the Kurd areas of Turkey. So it's very complicated. I mean, imagine you're Turkey and you put a dam that can cut off Iraq from water, but the Kurds are living there. These are all very complicated, geographical issues. But yeah, the Iranians, the last thing that they want to do is go to war, to get nuked for what? What do they care? I mean,
yeah, they don't.
Israel wants us to go to war with Iran. Israel knows they can't win a war with Iran unless they can drag us into it.
Yeah, and Iran learned during the Iran-Iraq war, we don't want to fight like that again because it's too expensive, it's too costly for manpower. There was basically they were at a stalemate, and they realized that if we fight like that again, that's not going to be, even if it's on our turf, it's still not going to be beneficial to the country. What's more beneficial is for us to project power outside of our country into our region, and to put people like Al Qaeda is doing right now, putting people in key positions of power in countries all over the world to change the country to a Muslim nation versus trying to take it over by force. They figured that out in the Iran-Iraq war, and we're still fighting World War II. We're still talking about. We're like this week with the whole Trump's battleship thing, which I think is retarded, fake, and gay. But who's going to build it? Who's going to staff it? Who's going to sail it? We don't have the sailors. We can't even dry dock our freaking subs right now to fix the subs.
Yeah,
we got like a 2-year backlog to go refit our subs, and you're going to put a new battleship out there?
Surface ships are just targets now.
Oh yeah, they're missile sponges.
The bigger they are, the bigger the target.
Yeah, retarded, fake, and gay, the whole damn thing. So, anyway, I was going somewhere with that.
What?
The Golden Fleet, Trump class.
Well, it's supposed to be
I think we're seeing like a sign of dementia here. Every time that Trump does another Oval Office interview, more of the wall is covered with gold. Okay? I like gold, right? I mean, I like gold coins and gold chains, right? I like gold.
The word's moderation.
If every time I see Trump, more of the wall is covered with gold, and then he wants to name this fleet, the Golden Fleet, the Trump class, I think that it's like a sign of dementia, that he can't read the room, that he's not understanding that this is a bad look. I mean, whether or not you agree with the ballroom, okay, a ballroom up, ballroom down, who cares?
It's not a ballroom. It's not a ballroom, man. It's a data center. That's what he's building. He's building a $300 million data center right there under his feet that connects to the White House bunker. That's exactly what he's building.
Well, whatever
$300 million for a gold freaking ballroom? Why?
But some of this, there's nobody that can tell him, sir, naming a ship class after yourself is like was it Senator Harry Byrd in West Virginia while he was still alive. Everybody said, this is really a disgusting look. He's still the senator. Don't name everything in West Virginia the Harry Byrd this and that. He hadn't died yet, right? Let him die and let some years go by, and don't be building highways and bridges and dams all named for you. Well, nobody can get to Trump. My point is that Trump is in such an exclusion bubble that only sycophants apparently can get to him. because anybody that's reasonable would have said, sir, I think you should not call this the Golden Fleet. I agree, maybe there's a room for a new warship. It's not a battleship, not in tonnage or in any other marker, but it's something between a destroyer and a cruiser. Remember, an Arleigh Burke destroyer today is as big as a World War II cruiser. So there's like a tonnage inflation thing going on. But don't call it a battleship and compare it to the New Jersey. And those only existed in World War II because they were protected by aircraft carriers so that they could like pound Iwo Jima without worrying about air attack from the Japanese. But by itself, that idea of a capital ship that's just going to roam around the seas, taking on all comers with the greatest missiles, it's a joke. And we can't even build frigates. We canceled our frigate program. The LCS program is like a laughing stock. Our last, the Gerald Ford carrier, is like works half the time. I mean, it's a good thing we don't actually do strike attacks off of the Gerald Ford, because half the time its electrical catapults don't work, or its elevators don't work. So it's good. It's good for like bluffing. It's good for like when it works, do some flight ops and show the video. But our carrier programs up and down, our shipbuilding program's been a joke.
Well, we're behind in shipbuilding. We have a massive shortage of trades and trade workers to actually go work on the ships, and we don't produce any of the steel. Where do we get our steel from?
Yeah, we're going to have Korea build it. People are seriously saying, well, maybe Korea could build the hulls and we'll tow them over here and finish them here.
What could possibly go wrong with that scenario?
Right. Just have China build the ships.
China controls Korea.
Have China build the ships for us.
Yeah, I wonder what could possibly go wrong there.
If you just want to stack up, looking at the North Pole, because the Russians have a northern route over Siberia that is usable during the summer, and depending on how good your icebreakers are, it could be usable all year. And it's a huge shortcut to get from, say, Korea or China or Japan to Europe by going over the North Pole. It's a huge shortcut compared to the Suez Canal and the Red Sea and the Mediterranean, or going around Africa. It's a huge shortcut. And so they actually have built, and they exist, I think they're up to 6 of them now, these nuclear-powered icebreakers that make a path 150 feet wide so every ship can follow them. They're nuclear-powered, so they never have to be refueled. So it can't be like the Franklin, where it's stuck in the ice and nobody can get fuel to it, right? You can't helicopter out diesel fuel to run a ship. So they're nuclear-powered. They actually exist. And our icebreakers, it's like comparing a Mack truck to a Volkswagen Beetle. Our icebreakers are a joke. So we're trying to like buy them from other countries like Finland and put our paint on them. The Russians already have a class of these icebreakers. They can keep ships moving over Russia, which is Russian territorial waters, that we can't access, because this route goes below Russian islands where it's complete Russian-controlled territorial water. So they can access the Arctic year-round now, and we can't. So any oil reserves or mineral reserves in the Arctic, the Russians can exploit them. They have basically like mining cities on the very north coast of Siberia, but there's no way to get roads to them or railroads, because you've got mountain ranges and other problems. But if you can get ships to them, now you can have mining cities running full time, loading and unloading from ships year round. The Russians are already doing that. Americans don't understand this. We are so far behind in so many key areas. I mean, in weapons, we don't have hypersonics. We don't have supercavitating torpedoes. Americans have never even heard of supercavitating torpedoes. And these things go like 100 knots. And we don't have them or hypersonics at work. The Russians have them out in the fleet.
But we can't even make the hypersonics, though, without. Let me back up. They can't make the hypersonics without China's permission from China, because they need the rare earth minerals from China in order to do it. So doesn't China have to sign off on anything?
But Russia and China are now in an alliance.
No, but that's what I'm saying, Matt. Doesn't China have to sign off, approve, if the United States wants to drop these missiles on people? Because without the earth...
No, we can't. No, we can't. But Russia has them.
No, I know, but I'm talking about the United States.
We don't have any ability to buy the rare earths.
Because China could just say, no, denied.
Right. And we don't, and like I said before, any country can be a rare earth superpower if they're willing to like take New Jersey and turn it into an open pit mine, right? Pollution all over the place, and then build these mega factories where you take, a mountain full of dirt to get a cup full of rare earth. Any country can do that. It's not like it's a gold mine where you're picking nuggets out of a river. It's just a question of, do you want to make the investment to turn, Rhode Island into an open pit mine to get rare earths? China said, we'll do that. Fine. No problem. Right? EPA, who cares? America, I think this is under, I forget who this is under, Al Gore. I remember Al Gore announcing it. We were going to make a profit by selling our strategic tungsten reserve. This is like the thinking of liberal Democrats. You can't make a jet engine without tungsten, right? It's got properties of it can take high heat and not melt. So you add it to things to make alloys that can, like jet turbine blades and things like that.
Titanium, yeah.
Yeah. So we had tungsten mines in America, and we had a strategic tungsten reserve. This is sort of like when we laugh at Germany for closing down. Like Germany had its biggest coal producing plant. After 6 years, they took it down and destroyed it to save Mother Earth. Okay, they got rid of their nuclear power plants to save Mother Earth. They're going to run Germany on solar.
When they did it too.
Yeah, they're going to run Germany on solar panels, wind generators, and Russian natural gas. Well, we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, so they're kind of screwed. Our tungsten mines were on the Nevada-California border. It was called like the Mile High Mine or something like that. Not only did we sell off our strategic tungsten reserve, like in case of war, we'll have 10 years worth of tungsten to make things like jet engines. We sold it off so that on the books we could say, look, we just found $2 billion. Yeah, you sold off our strategic tungsten reserve into the world market, you fool. You depressed them. The price of tungsten went down that day immediately as soon as you started selling into it. So instead of tungsten being X, it was like you sold it for 1/3 X because everybody knew you were selling off your strategic reserve. Then the mine where we made the tungsten, not only did they close the mine, all of these like railroads built on the edge of the cliffs for miles and miles, and all the infrastructure, they said condors won't like it. Nobody goes there, but condors and rare salamanders won't like it. So they not only closed the mine, they demolished all the infrastructure. They removed all the infrastructure, so it couldn't be reopened. I mean, Ann Coulter says, if you flip a coin 100 times in a row and it lands on heads every time, it's probably not it's probably more than just an accident. It's probably sabotage or treason. Or Ian Fleming said, once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. Who closes the tungsten mine and demolishes it after selling off the tungsten reserve? Democrats. So we're in a position now where we can't build ships and jets without outside help. So in that sense, I support Trump. He's at least trying to make Fortress America and South America, keep the Chinese from getting what they need, and God knows where we'll get what we need. But we're probably going to go into a war over it very soon.
Didn't Ian Fleming also say shaken, not stirred? Was that him?
Yes. He was an operations officer during World War II, so he didn't actually go on these spy missions, but he read all the after-action reports of these special operations executive guys running around doing crazy stuff in Europe, and he thought, I could make a great series out of this. And He was like chain smoking Pall Malls, like 3 packs a day, and he wrote all the James Bond novels like in a couple years in Jamaica at the beach in his beach house. I mean, just banging them out on a typewriter. All the great James Bond novels he wrote like, a month each, based on the ideas that he got from World War II.
Did you read them all?
Um, a lot of them, they're not even long. They're like 150 pages. But yeah, he was something else.
Well, and that's the thing with the. So we had to do a little movie talk in there for a few minutes. And maybe at the end we'll talk about My Blue Heaven because that's Steve's favorite movie. One of his favorite movies. But
The shoes are tragic.
but the whole reindustrialization of the United States, I think people need to understand it's going to take decades for this.
Yeah, even if we start today, it will take us 20 years to
We don't get
rebuild
there.
the infrastructure and then to rebuild the thing to rebuild is not just the infrastructure, it's the knowledge base, right?
Right.
We just don't have the knowledge base anymore.
We don't have the engineers, the machinists, the welders.
No, that's because our university system is run by communists. So we're not generating STEM products, we're generating a bunch of feel-good blue hairs.
Right. And China, people can say, for years, people said, sure, they're producing 25 times more electrical engineers than we are, but ours are really clever. They're like Steve Jobs. They come up with these great ideas. And those Chinese, they're just like robots. They can learn the equations, but they're not going to come up with the great ideas. If you've got 25 times more engineers graduating every year, I'm thinking there's a few Steve Jobs in there. Okay.
Oh yeah, and this was the other thing too, right? This was go all the way back to 2009, and we were the DoD and the intelligence community completely misunderstood the threat from China as it relates to cyber, right? They completely missed the boat, and I'll never forget. I was in this classified briefing, and one of the units that we had, a premier intel unit that worked for Keith Alexander doing the network hunt mission, which is a bullshit term for I'm going to go find bad guys, which is what most security guys do anyway. They had 25 people. And somebody looked across the table and said, how many do the Chinese have? And I'm like, conservative estimate, 3,000 at least, if not 10,000. They're generating at least 1,000 to 2,000 cyber professionals a month. And that's on the attack side. That's not on the defense side. So we've completely missed the boat.
And Trump still wants to bring hundreds of thousands over to get their education here.
Oh, well, that's because, again, the lobbies come in to Susie Wiles' office, and she's a lobbyist darling, and she's like, sir, we can't turn this off. Remember when COVID started, and Trump, one of the first briefing, Trump says, I'm going to force all the pharmaceuticals to bring production for pharmaceuticals back here. And then what happened? Nothing. All the lobbyists came in the next day, and that evaporated. Same shit.
I want to ask you guys something in relation to China, because this is a conversation I've been having and even thoughts in my head, and you two tell me what you think. I've wondered, as I've gone further down the road here, is China the enemy? I mean, they serve their best interest, but they came into the United States. The United States government allowed all this, right? I mean, the United States allowed them to be in the universities. They allowed these spies to sleep with Congress people. So all these things the United States government knew about. And here's the thing: as a taxpayer, Steve, say something. If you want the camera to go on you, you can show that up.
This is all their doctrine. This is all of their doctrine. But this is the one that's the most important. This was written almost 20 years ago. And it is by far.
Say what it is. Say what it is for people. Say what it is for people on the audio. They can't see.
So the book is Chinese Information War Theory and Practice. And it was Timothy L. Thomas from the Army War College is the one who put all these together. He's down at Fort Leavenworth. And I got this from the university down there at Fort Leavenworth. And I can tell you that it's probably one of the most comprehensive looks at Chinese Information War. The other one's called Recasting the Red Star, and the third one's called The Dragon's Quantum Leap. The three of them are a 3-part series, and I can tell you, I've had these books since, I don't know, 2006, 2007. And I can tell you that everything China is doing today is right out of their doctrine. Every bit of it. China is they're not our ally. I don't care what anybody says. They are not our ally. If they were, they wouldn't be sending people to, well, first of all, let me say this I'm just going to say this from chasing them out of our networks for the better part of 10 years. The Chinese have stolen just about every piece of defense industrial based technology that we've produced in the last 20 years, and they took it wholesale. That's not our ally. The other thing the Chinese have done on a regular basis is industrial espionage across all lines of industry. That's not our ally. And thirdly, this Maoist marketing program, which is exactly what they're doing in blue cities. They're moving all of their pieces into the surrounding area around all these blue cities. And look at San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, even Boston. They have communist mayors in charge of those cities right now, especially San Francisco and Boston and now Seattle. That's not our ally.
And
That's an
Minnesota,
enemy.
yeah, Minneapolis for sure.
And I'm not saying they're our ally or the United States is ally at all. You didn't think I was saying that, did you?
No, you're just asking the question: are they an enemy or are they an ally?
No, not an ally. No, I don't think they're an ally. But I mean, the United States government to me allowed all this to happen. That's what I'm saying.
Politicians that were bought off allowed this to happen.
That's what I mean.
Let's call this what it is, right? This is treason.
But it's part of the full spectrum of warfare, which is espionage and suborning traitors.
Is China still a communist country in your eyes, or do they have
absolutely.
No.
The Chinese Communist Party still runs everything,
But they're not communists. They just have to keep they have to keep the markup. I totally agree with Mearsheimer and others. They can't, because of the Asian face saving thing. They can't say we're taking down Mao. He was really terrible. He did all these bad things. Communism down. So they just keep the marquee up on Tiananmen Square with the big Mao. But they've got more billionaires in China now than we do. I mean,
that's different than saying they're not they're no longer a communist country.
Well, they're authoritarian, but they are definitely not out working on collective farms, all wearing the same uniform.
Well, they're not using the communist doctrine that Marx and Lenin.
No, when they were a communist country, you couldn't tell a general from a private because they couldn't have insignias, because they had
fair enough.
But now they've got billionaires with private jets.
Right.
So it's authoritarian.
They're still tightly controlled by the Communist Party. Let's make that very clear.
And it's called the Communist Party, but they are not communists. They are authoritarian fascist regime. But they can't, for Asian face-saving purposes, take down Mao and say, now we're going to do the shame period over communism.
Yeah,
that's not part of the Asian culture to say we're going to now atone for our sins.
It's not the doctrinal form of communism. It's a hybrid form of communism.
But in the sense that,
remember, Xi is very, very much a Maoist. He is very much a fan of Mao. He did his whole pilgrimage back to the Maoist museum when he got his 10 years of reign. So to say
in terms of ruling and authority, but not in terms of allowing people to start businesses.
No, that's a different economics is different.
In Cuban communism, they wouldn't even allow you to have a house restaurant where you allow two people to come in and sit in your kitchen. That was considered capitalism. Go to jail.
Yeah.
And so when they would liberalize, they would say, okay, now you can have a home kitchen and you can have two people come in and sit at your table. They considered that liberalizing. In China, you have more billionaires starting more businesses, Wild West style.
Yeah.
Less regulation. There's less impedance to a business startup in China than in America, by far.
Yeah.
That's why it's one of the reasons people want to start a business in China. You just go in and pay the right people, and you can start a factory.
Well, how about
in America? It'll be 10 years before you break ground.
How about the infrastructure versus the infrastructure in the United States?
Well, China's got a lot of systemic problems, right? It's apples and oranges when it comes to infrastructure because they've invested heavily in infrastructure in the last 20 years. But again, they don't have the same building codes that we have, so their infrastructure is not as robust.
Yeah, a
as,
lot of it's
as-
bullshit. A
yeah,
lot of there's ghost cities.
right. So they have a lot of infrastructure, but a lot of that infrastructure was built under the guise that it was going to build out. It was going to be this big glamorous, modern city, and most of them are empty.
At the,
I mean, I meant like airports and just train systems and roads and.
Well, the train system is robust now because they've invested heavily.
something I'd never even heard of, and only recently learned about. I don't know why this was not covered in any of my history books. After the Civil War, railroads were like the tech bubble, and like 2/3 of all railroads that were built in the 1870s and 1880s went nowhere. People people convinced people to lend money, and they built railroads to nowhere that were just abandoned. So it was like a tech bubble, and a lot of these railroads were like total shit, and a lot of their bridges were total shit because they were into a new technology, and the finance was there. Everybody thought railroads are the panacea for everything. Railroads are the future. So China has done a lot of malinvestment in the same kind of a thing as the American overinvestment in railroads, building ghost cities that are shit, that are already falling down. But that's not to say that their bridges and their railroads today suck. I mean, they've got a lot of technology that we don't have. I mean, how much money has California spent on a bullet train and hasn't produced 1 mile of usable bullet train? China is got bullet trains running now. If you compare the investment in GDP in Asia, Japan 20 years ago was still bigger than China. Japan is like nothing compared to China now. China's cars are all over the world. Nobody in South America is even buying Toyotas anymore. They're buying Chinese cars that are very good cars at half the price. See, we're not even aware of that in America because we're inside of our own bubble. We're still thinking in terms of Hyundai, Kia versus Toyota. Forget Audi, Volkswagen; those things are dead men walking. But if you go to Africa or to South America, they're buying Chinese cars, and a lot of them are electrical cars that charge very fast. So yeah, China, don't discount them. I mean, like Iran. I'm not saying I love Iran. Who cares about their politics? I'm just saying, don't discount Iran, don't discount Russia, don't discount China. They've all got their problems, but they got a lot of smart people. And smart people want to, get ahead in the world. And if that means inventing new weapons or new technologies, they're going to do it. And we're kind of like being lost in the dust. We're like the British Empire, still thinking it's like 1920 when it's 1950. And the British Empire was a hollow shell. It still had flags up in Hong Kong and Singapore, across Africa, India, which was also Pakistan. So 1950 on the world map, Britain looked like, wow, the sun never sets on the British Empire. But it was hollow and rotting. And in a sense, that's where America is now. We've still got this empire spanning the globe, but our technology is not modern. Our airports are shit. I mean, to start a factory in America, take 10 years, good luck. Go to China, Vietnam, you can start one and be running it in, next year.
Yeah. And there's no way to say this without just saying it. The system has to fail now in order for a reset to occur, right?
For sure.
The system that we've been operating under for 200 years has been long dead. Now we're just waiting for somebody to pronounce it dead. It's like the media, right? Trump came in his first term in 2016 and pronounced the media dead. And everybody went, yeah, they've been dead for a while. And now we're watching them trying to resuscitate the system to keep it alive long enough to avoid collapse. But the reality is we've already passed the precipice, right? We're watching this in the gold and silver market right now to bring this
That's
full
right.
circle. We're watching
Yes.
this, and the dollar is worth, the fiat currency is worth, nothing. And here's what this makes me wonder. I wonder if there is any gold in Fort Knox. Now would be a good time to go do that audit, to go find out what's really there.
or under the World Trade Center in New York.
Yeah, to figure out who actually pilfered it and where it went.
Right. How many times
like-
it's been sold.
Yeah.
There's a pile of IOUs, but instead of like 1,000 IOUs, there's 10,000 IOUs where everybody thinks they own the gold.
Here's one for
I
275,000.
think
Like,
we do have go ahead.
no, I said here's one for 275,000 for the Ferrari, like Dumb and Dumber. You might want to hang on to that one when they open up the suitcase and there's all those sticky notes.
How about Mr. Call of Duty and his $700,000 Ferrari? He didn't do too good coming out of that tunnel. Just because you can afford a Ferrari, maybe you shouldn't drive it unless you're Brad Pitt in F1. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Matt? I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah. No, we have a math problem, and some of the things that we focus on, like Venezuela, China, the silver, we're coming to the end of the dollar era. And I mean, some people say, Matt, there's even Martin Armstrong, and I totally respect his opinion. He says there's no substitute for the dollar, not for the next generation. But half of the world is working around it. They're making this thing called the unit, which is going to be a basket of gold-backed currency plus the fiat currency of the 5 main BRICS countries. So they all kind of share the risk and share the load. So the BRICS countries, the 5 main BRICS countries, and like the other 50 or 80 countries that are signed up with them, they're going to be doing deals that do not involve the dollar. And that's coming. That is coming. And the accounting will be done in these units, and it's going to cut the dollar out. And when we lose dollar supremacy, we're basically Argentina with nukes.
Yeah.
Argentina was at one time like the 3rd or 4th most powerful country in the world.
For Argentina with nukes and pedophiles running the show with their hands on the switch.
Right.
What
and
could
all
possibly go wrong?
And they're all blackmailed by everybody, so you can never fix anything.
Well, I want to throw one more thing in here. I know we're getting to the end, but you guys okay for a few more minutes?
Yeah.
This is where the other thing too is the idea that Russia, China, and the United States. Why would Russia and China? They don't want to partner with the United States in any of this, or
They
do
don't
they?
trust us. They don't trust our politicians. They don't.
Why would they trust us?
Yeah, they don't trust us. Why should Putin trust us? I mean, look, Putin's got his own stuff going on, right? He's done his own thing. Same with Xi. But at the end of the day, our problem is not diplomacy. It is the fact that we have bankers running the show. I mean, one of the latest Tucker Carlson interviews, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was talking about how when Obama came around, he was actually put in front of the public by the bankers. And I would say that that's a bigger storyline than that, because everybody knew Obama was the Manchurian candidate. Everybody that was in DC knew he was coming, knew it. So where I'm going with this is our problem is more than systemic. It's deeply rooted in the political elite, to the point where everybody outside of our country knows that they can't trust anyone in the political elite, right, because the winds change every time there's a new candidate. And they know that we can't go and pilfer the resources in Africa anymore. We can't go and pilfer the resources in India anymore. We can't exploit the Chinese anymore. So where are we now? We're back in South America, and we're back in parts of Africa.
We'll take Venezuela's oil with our Navy.
It's exactly what it is.
Send the
right?
Marines.
Yeah. So we can't go in and exploit the resources through, lawfare or through
better trade deals,
mercantilism.
Nope.
No, we got to go do it militarily now, because that's how far down the bowl we swirl.
Yes.
And this doesn't end well for Americans in the next 10 years. And I would say if we make it to 28, I will be highly surprised if we make it that far.
Yeah, I think that we get a man with a mustache. There's no voting our way out of lawfare at this point. You got judges like Boasberg and 100 more.
For that to change, Matt, Trump would have to go full Lincoln. And he doesn't have the balls to do it.
No, it won't be Trump. It'll have to be an economic collapse where people are so desperate that supermarkets are looted, people are starving, cities are burning. Then you're going to have a general with a mustache come on TV, and it's a question of will he be Stalin, Hitler, Pinochet, or Franco, but some guy like that's going to show up on TV and say, this is what we must do to feed the people. And people that are starving are going to go, I'm for that guy
Yeah.
because
Trust
I'm
the plan.
starving.
Trust the plan.
Chess.
But it's
chess,
only going to
5D.
be after a total disaster,
5D
dollar
chess. You know, trust
collapse.
the plan. Yeah.
Batman's coming.
In the meantime, make
I'm
sure
holding out for aliens, baby. I'm holding out for
I told
aliens.
you want aliens.
Make sure you got some of this, baby.
I got some of that, yeah.
You want aliens? Go to your local Walmart, man. You see them all Saturday night, tomorrow night. Go about 9 o'clock, and they'll be all running around.
As David Codria calls them, MREs, morons ready to eat.
Steve, let's take a minute here real quick and just talk about what you're doing ahead to 26 with your show and your Substack, and Matt, you do the same.
Well, so in October I started working on a book. I've recruited some folks, and we stalled out in October, November, just because my personal life is pretty busy. But my plan in 26 is to finish. We're writing a book on resilient communities. My plan is to finish the book in 26 to get the book published. The focus of the channel, when I originally started, was my big fat plan was to have a show that talks about here's the current threat environment. Like, here's what we're seeing, not the strategic stuff, the stuff that's local to the US, right? And then pivot off of that and have shows based on, here's how you prep for this threat. Here's how you prepare for this threat. Here's how you do, prep for an overall economic collapse. These are the things you need to be considering, related to your finances, gold and silver, et cetera, so that's where I'm going in 26, is to really expand the portfolio. So it's not just me doing a roundtable or me doing a sit rep or an interview. It's actually like I'm getting ready to do a show strictly on bug out bags and what to carry in your vehicle, what not to carry in your vehicle. So that's where I'm going. I'm trying to get away from the political side of this, because it's a self-licking ice cream cone. There's always something to talk about.
Fubar.
It's always something to talk about, right?
Yeah.
But I want to focus on how do I turn what we're seeing into something operational that people can use, right? On a shoestring budget. And how do we, some life hacks that people can use instead of going to the shit ferry and buying all this stuff, right? Because most people are like, tell me what stuff to buy from the shit ferry so I can have it delivered, but they don't know how to use any of it. So like I'm going to do, I actually halfway through doing a radio programming course, right? Which is really Matt Everett's, him and the Troop. That's
Brush
their
beater
shtick,
on
right?
X.
Yeah. So those guys, I mean, he wrote a book on Biofang radios. I suggest that people buy it.
The Gorilla's Guide.
Yeah. So it's things like that I'm working on in 26, really trying to focus in on operationalizing how to stay, how to survive what's coming.
Yeah, and I would add to that, you have to think beyond, fortifying your house, because no house is going to be a successful Alamo. You're going to have to organize your zip code, your neighborhood. You're going to have to figure out how to be the leader in any situation, in an influx moving situation. Because you can't expect your brain dead normie NPC neighbors to do this.
No.
How do you organize herd those cats so that your neighborhood can be defended, or your zip code? How do you get your local sheriff's deputies on board with your plan?
The blissfully unaware. Yeah.
Yeah, which is most of people, and we're so far ahead of them. But you can't exist as an atomized little island in your house or your ranch, or you have to have like your whole valley, your whole zip code. You've got to help organize it.
Yeah, you got to have a resilient community in order to survive.
I mean, where's the water come from?
Yeah.
I have a well, but how about the 100 people that live around me?
Yeah.
How are they going to feel when I have water and they don't? So you better think about their water too.
Yeah.
Steve, where can people find you?
You can find me in the Path Forward on Substack. You can find me at LTC Stephen Murray, and the Path Forward on Rumble. And I'm at LTC _Stephen_MUR at Twitter. And now I'm on Locals, which I just got set up this week. So, yeah.
Matt, what are you working on for 26?
Well, my daughter just worked on her first baby, so who is just 1 week old today. So I'm pretty thrilled about that. Um,
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats,
co-
bud. That's
to
awesome.
her and her great Marine veteran husband, who, if I had to like pick a man to be my daughter's husband, I could not have picked a guy as good as him. So I'm really fortunate in that respect. But I've been doing a Christmas sale on all of these great books, and Christmas is over. But if anybody wants to that sees this video, you can just say I saw it on Coffee and a Mike, all these great books. I'll do either trilogy, the Enemies trilogy, or the Dan Kilmer trilogy, plus the Bracken collection for $60, which is like, which shipping and handling included. So anyway, yeah, I'm always selling the books, and I've got a new book that I'll be putting out, half of it on Kindle pretty soon, which is my Ireland book, where Americans bring 900 guns into Ireland because they're going to need them. And that's an echo of actual Irish history from a century ago. So the guys that brought the 900 Mausers into Ireland in 1914, they're all considered big heroes now. Even though half of them were shot during the Irish Civil War in the 20s, they're all heroes now. So the idea that, like, yeah, bringing guns into Ireland, Matt, you're like, really, that's a pretty radical idea. That actually is right from Irish history. So if anything, the threat is greater now than it was in 1916 or 1920. So that's the book I'm working on, the Ireland novel. But I've got all my other novels, and if you get them from me, I'll sign them. My details are on my website, Enemies Foreign and Domestic. If you want them on Audible or Kindle, you have to go to Amazon. But getting the printed books from Amazon today is such a waste. They practically, I get nothing from the books that I send to Amazon. I do make money from the Kindle ebooks and the Audible books, but if you're going to buy the physical books, I recommend getting them from me, because all I do is ship them to Amazon and then I get nothing for them. Anyway, so that's me.
As always, I mean, thank you both. One, I mean, for always taking the time, make yourself available to come on my show. I mean, I've had a great year of growth, and would not have happened if it wasn't for both of you guys supporting me by making yourselves available. So
And
thank
you
you.
have some great guests on. I mean, way above us two knuckleheads.
I was just gonna say that, man.
Yeah, so thank you for having us knuckleheads on.
That's right.
I was always, I mean, anytime, but also for people listening, I put these conversations up ad free and early, both on Substack and Patreon. So, if you consider becoming a paid subscriber, you get early access and ad free. And then for those that are watching on YouTube, Rumble, audio files, comment. I read all the comments, share, like, and sure won't be that long before we talk again.
Hope
Thank
not.
you.
Mic drop.